137 troopers stationed at Fort Wingate wait idly by for the heat of the day to pass. It is August, the last few weeks of the deadly heat before the north wind brings a more temperate climate. Lieutenants Mitchell and McGonagall sit in the shade of their tumbled-down quarters, their gazes affixed to the rising plume of dust to the north. Whoever they are, there's lots of them. The 8th Cavalry departed a week ago, but were occupied hundreds of miles away to the south, chasing Alzate and his elusive band of Mescalero Apache. Couldn't be Apache either. Besides the fact that the troublesome Apaches are nowhere near Fort Wingate, no such Indian would be as stupid as to kick up so much dust declaring their location for all their enemies. The detachment of the 9th Cavalry are to the east, surveying the unmapped territory. They're probably Navajo. They were subdued over 10 years ago and have been fairly peaceable ever since their resettlement. The fort's garrison are often involved with the local feuds between the Navajo and the American settlers, rustling, thievery, and the occasional murder or two. For the most part, the situations handle themselves. Still, if those are Navajo, there's a lot more of them gathered in one group than either lieutenant has ever seen. Something's got them riled. The two lieutenants watch as the signs grow faint, headed northeast into the heart of the Navajo reservation. In the evening of that same day, the two lieutenants stand at attention as Colonel P.T. Swain shuffles a stack of telegrams in his hand. At ease, gentlemen. This is the latest correspondence from Mr. John Pyle, our local Indian agent, he says as he wraps the deck of telegrams against his desk before taking pen and ink in hand. He writes hurriedly, adjusting his spectacles in the evening light. I'm dispatching you two, Lieutenants Mitchell and McGonagall, as representatives of the United States military in this matter. Travel by way of Fort Defiance, where you shall deliver this letter to the telegraph office. You will rendezvous with a Mr. Juan Lorenzo Hubble. He runs the trading post in the Ganado region of the reservation. From there, ascertain the nature of this disturbance. Use your influence to get them to agree to a peaceable solution or resolution of their difficulties. Colonel Swain seals his orders, looking up at the two lieutenants over the rim of his glasses. Under no circumstances are you to take an active part in the difficulties between the Indians themselves. Do I make myself clear? The lieutenants respond with a crisp, yes, sir. What's causing the restlessness among the Navajo, Colonel? More rustling? Raiding? Colonel Swain removes his spectacles. What do you officers know about witches? According to Navajo belief, there are a number of distinct methods of carrying out malevolent activity. Each has its own Navajo name, and these terms are almost never used interchangeably. Clyde Kluckholm has defined these terms as witchery, sorcery, wizardry, and frenzy witchcraft. Navajo witchcraft is intertwined with Navajo or Diné spirituality. The two are not separate things, but parts of a whole belief system. The Navajo believe illness and life problems are disorder within one's life and can be remedied or can be balanced with herbs, prayers, songs, and ceremonies. This disorder is contracted through the breaking of taboo, coming into contact with an evil thing or place, but witchcraft is the most frequently mentioned cause of disease. Witches are associated with death and the dead. Despite the sensationalized articles surrounding Navajo religion, witchcraft is not simply a method of practicing power or medicine. It is not a neutral practice. In fact, it is the very opposite of medicine and altogether evil. Navajo healers are singers known as Hata and devote their lives to the curing ceremony known as Hatal. In Navajo culture, a skinwalker, a Yinadlushi, is a type of harmful witch which has the ability to turn into, possess, or disguise themselves as an animal. The term is never used for healers, and are closely associated not only with death, but with incest. Suspicion of incest means by that very fact suspicion of witch activity, and vice versa. Both men and women may become skinwalkers, although references to these male witches are considerably more numerous. Almost all female witches mentioned in actual anecdotes are old women. Some Navajo insisted that only childless women could be witches. Skinwalking is most often learned and passed on through familial lineage, a parent, a grandparent, or a spouse, but a spouse also often remains ignorant that a partner is a witch. Killing a near relative, normally a sibling, is part of the initiation into the witchery way. Persons become witches in order to wreak vengeance, in order to gain wealth, or simply to injure wantonly, most often motivated by envy. Wealth is obtained by robbing graves or by the practice of fee splitting, when a witch will make a person seriously ill and his partner, a practitioner, would treat him and the two would split the fees. Or simply the witch would cause the illness and a healer would recommend the treatment of the very same witch. Direct blackmail is seldom mentioned, but victims are often rich individuals. The classic witchery way technique is that mentioned in the Navajo creation legend. A preparation, a poison, is made of the flesh of corpses. The flesh of children, especially of twin children, is preferred, and the bones at the back of the head and skin whorls are prized ingredients. This concoction is the means to inflict pain, sickness, and death upon a victim. In a word, a curse. When this corpse poison is ground into a powder, it looks like pollen. It may be dropped into a hogan, an old Navajo domicile, from the smoke hole, placed in the nose or mouth of a sleeping victim, or blown from furrowed sticks into the face of someone in a large crowd. Corpse poison is occasionally stated as having been administered in a cigarette. Fainting, lockjaw, a tongue black and swollen, immediate unconsciousness, or some similar dramatic symptom is usually said to result promptly. Sometimes, however, the effects are less obvious. The victim will gradually waste away, and the usual ceremonial treatments are unavailing. Witches as skinwalkers meet at night to plan concerted action against victims, to initiate new members, or to have intercourse with the bodies of deceased women, to practice cannibalism, or to kill victims at a distance by ritualized practices. The place of assembly is most often said to be a cave. There is general agreement that all types of witch activity must be carried away from the person's home. The witches sit in a circle, surrounded by piles or baskets of corpse flesh. Some Navajo have volunteered information that rows of unidentifiable human heads are likewise stored in the cave. The witches are undressed, save for masks, wearing many beads and other totems. Their bodies are painted in the fashion reminiscent of that carried out in ceremonials. The proceedings are directed by a chief skinwalker, for whom all the others work. This chief witch and other leading witches are thought of as rich, but they are assisted by a class of menial helpers, and these are said to be poor, so poor that sheer preservation demands that they work for the witches. English-speaking Navajo describe the proceeding as kind of like a sing, or just a bad sing. Most sources agree that songs were sung and dry paintings, often described of as colored ashes, were made. Some informants specified that paintings represented the intended victim. One interviewed Navajo suggested that the assembled witches spit and release other bodily fluids upon the sand pictures. A few stated that the chief witch shot a turquoise bead with a small bow at some definite part of the figure represented in the painting. Some Navajo asserted that the bows were made of human shin bones. Skinwalkers are active primarily at night, roaming about at great speed in the skins of wolf, coyote, bear, owl, desert fox, and crow. Throughout the Navajo myth, the coyote is the embodiment of evil. Carl Looker, in his book Coyote Way, sees the Navajo coyote as the defamed hunter god who was once a creator trickster, but who, after hunting was abandoned in favor of farming and animal husbandry, became the symbol of all that was evil and undesirable. The Navajos continue to assign coyote a principal role in creation, witchcraft, and sexual deviance. Indeed, Inalausi and Maiko, wolf, are the most common colloquial term for witch. These skinwalkers can take possession of bodies of human victims if a person looks them in the eye. After taking control, the witch can make its victims do and say things they wouldn't otherwise. Once they were shapeshifted, others could tell that they were not real animals because their eyes still retained their human aspect, and when lights are shone on them, they turn bright red. Alternatively, their eyes look more animal-like when they are in their human form. It is said that, in addition to be able to shapeshift, the skinwalker can also control the creatures of the night, such as wolves and owls, and make them do their bidding. Some can call up spirits of the dead and reanimate the corpses to attack their enemies. Because of this, the Indians rarely ventured out alone. Its supernatural powers are uncanny, as they are said to run faster than a car and have the ability to jump high cliffs. They are extremely fast, agile, impossible to catch, and leave tracks larger than animals. When seen, they have been described as not quite human and not fully animal. The closer to animal, the more animalistic their instincts and behavior. They are usually naked, but some have seen the creatures wearing tattered shirts or jeans. The Skinwalker kills out of greed, anger, envy, spite, or revenge. It also robs graves for personal wealth and collects much-needed ingredients for black magic use. These witches can live on the unexpired lives of their victims, and they must continually kill or perish themselves. Skinwalkers can only be fought with the magic they used to become a skinwalker in the first place. A blessing from a medicine man can prevent encounters with skinwalkers, and generally, these medicine men are the only people who know the correct spells and rituals that can combat their dark magic. Leather pouches containing the gall of animals is a common amulet among the Navajo to ward off skinwalkers. If you can get past their endurance, shape-shifting abilities, and possible coven, it is said that you can kill a skinwalker by calling them by their true name. You can also kill a skinwalker by using a bullet or knife dipped in white ash, though you must strike the skinwalker in the neck or the head. Skinwalkers can be tracked normally the morning after an incident, when dirt falling in from the Hogan's smoke hole, unusual loud barkings of dogs, or other strange noises or occurrences have made the dwellers in the Hogan feel that a skinwalker has been there. The tracks of skinwalkers are usually spoken of as larger than those of actual animals. Sometimes the trail is followed a long distance, only to end at the home of some Navajo. In other cases, the skinwalker is caught and often recognized as a clan or real sibling. The trapped witch will try to buy their freedom with beads and other jewelry, but these are refused with horror. Sometimes the witch is shot at night or at such distance that recognition is impossible. Then some Navajo, often at a distant spot, turns up with an unexplained wound. A confession extracted from a skinwalker is believed to be very helpful for the victims of all types of witchcraft. The accused is led around by a rope and tied down and is refused food, drink, or to relieve himself until he confesses. Other tongue-loosening tortures include placing hot coals on their feet, beating with sticks and war clubs, and stoning. If a witch confesses, the victim will at once begin to slowly improve, and the witch would die within the year. When it exists, Navajo laws have always said that when a person becomes a witch, they have forfeited their humanity and their right to existence. There is no cure. However, in a few instances, the accused were allowed to escape if he permanently left the community. A number of witches are said to have fled to Conancito, Upper Antelope Canyon, and the Black Mesa areas. These locations are still considered dark places among the Navajo to this day. In 1864, the Navajo underwent the Long Walk after their defeat at the hands of Kit Carson. The destination, Bosque Redondo, 300 miles from their homeland. The Ute, traditional enemies of the Navajo, aided the U.S. forces in their subjugation, and following the resettlement of the Navajo, the Utes continued to raid them, as did New Mexican slavers. A large number of Navajo slaves were taken and sold throughout the region. Out of vengeance and desperation, many of the Navajo turned to shape-shifting to escape the terrible conditions and inflict horrors upon the local Utes. In 1868, the United States signed the Treaty of Bosque Redondo, allowing the Navajo to return to their traditional homeland. While the Navajo left, the Ute claimed that the Skinwalkers remained, terrorizing their people. Indeed, the dreaded Skinwalkers also returned with the Navajo. It would be many years before accusations of witchcraft and the hunting of Skinwalkers would begin en masse. In April of 1878, the Navajo witch purges began. It is said that a man named Hustine Boasi and the Skinwalkers within his clan began cursing his neighbors, seizing their waste and trash, burying these items in graves so that the targets would become ill. Boasi instructed the young people of his clan to infiltrate the wealthy and powerful families of the Navajo, to spy, marry, and become employed in their service, all the while waiting for opportunities to cause more injury. Drought, famine, and disease followed, and the Navajo elders were able to identify Boasi as the architect of their troubles. In what would only be described as a bloodletting frenzy, the entire Navajo people began to hunt the suspected Skinwalkers. Charles Hubble was a trader on the reservation. In a letter to the garrison commander at Fort Defiance, Charles mistakes the erupting violence as an impending Indian raid, but may accurately portray the intensity of the purge. There is a big row going on here among the Indians. They just killed one of them, and we are in danger of our lives. A big crowd just passed here, and they are going to fix themselves to go on a fight at Canyon de Chalet, and the Indians around here are expecting a war party from Canyon de Chalet to come here for a big fight. The boy was killed in front of Hardison's house. He was beaten down with rocks and plugged full of arrows, and they're going to kill Bawasi and 4 others. A man named Hollowish John and another named Black Boy were among the first to be killed. John was killed by the banks of Ganada Lake. The Navajo led him around for a while, torturing him until he told what he knew. It is reported years after the fact that John taunted his captors, saying, "Hurry up and kill us all, or at least try. You won't. Bawasi is our leader, and we have buried some of your items. We have sung you into the ground. You're all already dead." They forced him to reveal where he buried these items, and John told them. Then they killed him. The Navajos sent a Hubble, a white man, to unearth the cursed items. Various items were wrapped in the Bosque Redondo Treaty of 1868 and stuffed in the belly of a corpse. A curse calling death upon those who respected and profited from the 1868 treaty. Around 50 Navajo caught Bawasi and his clan in the middle of a seeing ceremony. They dragged Bawasi from the lair and stoned him to death. It's conjectured that the mob killed or exiled the rest of Bawasi's extended family, given the familial ritual requirements to be initiated as a skinwalker. During the course of the witch purge, the U.S. military encouraged its officers and surrounding civilians to stay out of the Navajos' internal affair. Lieutenant Mitchell, the officer assigned with investigating the disturbance, chalks up 10 Navajo executed as skinwalkers, while some tribesmen claim it was as high as 40. Although with the revenge killings these events induced among the different Navajo bands, it is doubtless that the death toll is higher than the official reports. From 1870 to 1910, the Navajo describe an efflorescence of a practice called the sucking way. This is a cure for curses, an award against witchcraft and wizardry. The sucker normally cut with an arrowhead the place which hurt and sucked out some foreign object. It is usually mentioned that blood was sucked out and spit into a tray of pinyon bark. From here, an object would be obtained, a cursed item which caused the pain. However, a large number of Navajo interviewed from that time have volunteered skepticism about these so-called suckers. Suckers were generally held to be witches or wizards in league with a secret coven. Some held them to be charlatans in that they prepared in their mouths the objects which they were going to suck out. At the same time, the fear of suckers was manifest. A few Navajo holy men held that the sucker not only extracted the object, but also passed it back to a skinwalker to be used in future rituals. In this way, some believe the skinwalkers are able to survive and thrive as legitimate medicine men after the Great Witch Purge. Traditionally, the Navajo will not speak with outsiders about these creatures for fear of retribution by the skinwalkers. For that matter, it is a taboo subject amongst the natives themselves. However, in 1987, skinwalkers burst into the wider public consciousness when they were used as a defense in a murder trial in Flagstaff, Arizona. The body of a 40-year-old Navajo woman named Sarah Saganitso was found behind the hospital where she worked. A former English professor of Northern Arizona University named George Abney was accused, arrested, and taken to trial. The defense argued that a skinwalker had killed Saganitso based on the fact that she was a Navajo and found with a broken stick across her throat and a clump of graveyard grass near her truck. The defense claimed the 2 objects were evidence of a skinwalker ritual. Abney was at first found guilty, but then acquitted a year later. Many contemporary American Indians would argue that the skinwalker's place is in the living beliefs and customs of the Navajo, and that as such, it is not necessarily open to interpretation and exploration by those outside of that culture. That being said, it is best to leave the legend of the skinwalker to the night.